finished checking the cargo bay of his ship, the Prometheus. The docking procedure at Zephyrus Prime had taken longer than usual, but that was normal for the capital world of the Zephyrian Empire. Everything here moved slowly, following ancient protocols that no one dared to question. Marcus had been trading with the Zephyrians for 3 years now. They were strange beings, looking like they were made of living crystal that bent light in beautiful patterns, but they were also cold and proud, treating humans like useful pets rather than equals. Still, they paid well for human technology, and Marcus needed the credits to keep his crew fed. He was walking toward the bridge when the ship's alarm started blaring. Red lights flashed everywhere, and his crew members ran to their stations. Marcus rushed to the main display screen, expecting to see a system malfunction or maybe pirates approaching. Instead, he saw something much worse. Imperial guard ships surrounded the Prometheus. These weren't regular patrol vessels, but the personal fleet of the royal family. Their black hulls gleamed with energy shields and weapon ports glowed with deadly power. "Captain, they're demanding immediate surrender," called out Lisa, his communications officer. Her voice shook with fear. "They say you're under arrest by order of the Queen herself." Marcus felt his blood turn cold. A royal arrest meant serious trouble. In the 300 years since humans had joined the galactic community, very few had ever been summoned directly by Zephyrian royalty. Those who were usually never came back. "Tell them I surrender," Marcus said quietly. "Don't resist. I don't want anyone getting hurt because of me." Within minutes, Imperial guards boarded his ship. They moved like liquid metal, their crystalline bodies flowing through the corridors with impossible grace. Their leader, a tall figure whose body sparkled with gold and silver patterns, approached Marcus. "Human Marcus Chen, you will come with us immediately," the guard said. His voice sounded like wind chimes mixed with thunder. "Your crew will remain here under protective custody." Marcus looked around at his crew. These people depended on him. Lisa had 2 children back on Earth. Tom, his engineer, was saving money to buy his own ship. Sarah, the pilot, had medical bills for her sick mother. If something happened to him, what would happen to them? "My crew did nothing wrong," Marcus said firmly. "They're innocent." The guard's crystalline face showed no emotion. "That will be determined later. You will come now." Marcus had no choice. He followed the guards to their transport ship, leaving behind everything he had worked for. The journey to the royal palace took only 20 minutes, but it felt like hours. Through the transport's windows, he could see the magnificent city of Zephyrus Prime spreading out below them. The buildings looked like they were grown rather than built, twisting spires of crystal that reached toward the sky. Light danced through them in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Millions of Zephyrians moved through the streets like a river of living jewels. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The royal palace sat at the center of the city like a mountain made of pure light. As their transport approached, Marcus could see that the palace was actually floating several hundred feet above the ground, held up by forces he couldn't understand. Smaller platforms orbited around it like moons, connected by bridges that looked like they were made of solid rainbow. Inside the palace, Marcus was led through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls showed moving pictures of Zephyrian history, great battles and celebrations from thousands of years ago. Guards lined the hallways, their bodies glowing with different colors that Marcus had learned indicated their ranks and families. Finally, they reached the throne room. Marcus had never seen anything like it. The room was so large that clouds formed near the ceiling. The floor was made of some kind of crystal that showed the stars beneath their feet, as if they were standing in space itself. And at the far end, on a throne that looked like it was carved from a single enormous diamond, sat Queen Valestra. The queen was the most impressive Zephyrian Marcus had ever seen. Her body was at least 9 feet tall, made of crystal that shifted between every color imaginable. Light seemed to flow through her like water, creating patterns that constantly changed. When she moved, the air itself seemed to sing. Around the throne stood dozens of other Zephyrians, all wearing the complex robes and jewelry that marked them as nobles. They stared at Marcus with expressions of disgust and curiosity. He could hear them whispering in their musical language, and he didn't need a translator to know they were saying unpleasant things about humans. "Approach," the queen commanded, her voice filling the entire room without seeming loud. Marcus walked forward, his boots clicking on the crystal floor. He had been told that humans were supposed to kneel before Zephyrian royalty, but something inside him refused. He stopped about 10 feet from the throne and stood straight, meeting the queen's glowing eyes directly. A shocked silence filled the room. Several nobles made angry sounds, their bodies flashing with red light. But the queen raised one crystalline hand and everyone fell quiet. "You do not kneel," she observed. "No, your majesty," Marcus replied. "Where I come from, we believe all thinking beings are equal. I'll show respect, but I won't kneel." More angry flashing from the nobles. Someone shouted something in the Zephyrian language that was probably not a compliment, but the queen seemed almost amused. "Interesting," she said. "This is why we have chosen you, human Marcus Chen. You have something we need." "And what's that?" Marcus asked. The queen stood up from her throne, her full height now visible. She was even more impressive standing like a living statue made of pure light. "My daughter, Princess Lirelai, is dying," the queen said. "She suffers from dimensional resonance syndrome. Her body phases between different realities, and our greatest scientists cannot cure her. But they believe that humans possess a natural dimensional stability that could save her life." Marcus felt confused. "I'm not a doctor, your majesty. I don't know anything about dimensional syndromes." "You do not need to know," the queen replied. "You need only to live. By royal decree, you are commanded to share your life with my daughter. You will live in the same spaces, eat the same food, breathe the same air. Your human presence may stabilize her condition." The room began to spin as Marcus understood what she was saying. "You want me to live with the princess? For how long?" "Until she is cured. Months. Perhaps years." Marcus looked around the room at all the hostile faces staring at him. These beings thought humans were inferior, barely better than smart animals. The idea of one of their royal family living with a human clearly disgusted them. "And if I refuse?" he asked. The queen's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Refusal of a royal command is treason. The punishment is death." Marcus thought about his crew waiting back on his ship. He thought about all the humans throughout the galaxy who were just trying to make honest livings under alien governments that barely tolerated them. If he died here, it would just prove to the Zephyrians that humans were weak and disposable. But if he agreed and somehow succeeded, maybe it would change things. Maybe it would show these proud aliens that humans were worth respecting. "I'll do it," Marcus said firmly. "But I have conditions." The entire court gasped. Making demands of the queen was unthinkable. But Marcus continued. "My crew goes free and gets paid for this trip. My ship gets protected while I'm here, and I'm treated as an equal partner in helping your daughter, not as a servant or a pet." The queen stared at him for a long moment. Marcus could feel the hatred radiating from the nobles around the room. But finally the queen nodded. "Agreed," she said. "You will be taken to the princess immediately. Try not to disappoint us, human Marcus Chen. Both our species may depend on your success." Each one more elaborate than the last. The walls here were covered with moving artwork that showed the history of the royal family. Marcus saw images of great Zephyrian queens and kings ruling over vast fleets of starships, conquering worlds and building their empire across the galaxy. They stopped at a massive door that looked like it was made from a single piece of blue crystal. Strange symbols glowed along its edges, and Marcus could hear a low humming sound coming from behind it. One of the guards touched a pattern on the door and it slowly dissolved away like mist. "The princess's quarters," the guard announced. "You will remain here unless given permission to leave. Food and necessities will be provided." Marcus stepped through the doorway and heard the door reform behind him with a soft chiming sound. He was alone in what looked like the most beautiful prison he had ever seen. The room was enormous, easily the size of his entire ship. The ceiling stretched up so high that he couldn't see the top, disappearing into soft glowing clouds. One wall was completely transparent, offering a view of the city below and the stars beyond. Furniture that looked like it had grown from the floor itself was scattered around the space in elegant patterns. But what caught Marcus's attention immediately was the figure sitting at a desk near the window. Princess Lirelai was smaller than her mother, probably only about 7 feet tall, but she was still clearly royal. Her crystalline body was a pale blue color, like ice mixed with starlight. She was reading something on a holographic display, completely ignoring Marcus's arrival. As he watched, something strange happened. The princess's left arm suddenly became transparent, like she was turning into a ghost. She didn't seem surprised by this, just annoyed. She tapped something on her desk and her arm became solid again. "You must be the human," she said without looking up from her reading. Her voice was much softer than her mother's, like gentle music instead of thunder. "I was told they were bringing me a primitive mammal to cure my condition." Marcus felt his temper rise at the insult, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting angry wouldn't help anyone. "I'm Marcus Chen," he said politely. "And you're Princess Lyralee. I'm here to help if I can." Now she did look at him, turning away from her desk with fluid grace. Her face was beautiful in the alien way that all Zephyrians were, but Marcus could see something else there. She looked tired and frustrated, like someone who had been sick for a very long time. "Help?" she repeated. "You're not here to help. You're here because my mother is desperate enough to try anything, even associating with a lesser species. Do you know what dimensional resonance syndrome is, human?" "No," Marcus admitted, "but I'd like to learn." Princess Lyralee stood up and walked to the transparent wall. As she moved, Marcus noticed that her feet occasionally became see-through, causing her to stumble slightly. "It means my body doesn't stay in one reality," she explained. "Sometimes I phase into other dimensions. Sometimes I become transparent to this world. The scientists say it's getting worse. Eventually I'll phase completely out of existence." Marcus watched as her reflection in the window flickered like a bad hologram. "How long has this been happening?" 2 years, she said. "It started small, just a finger becoming transparent for a few seconds. Now it's spreading, watch." As she spoke, her entire right leg became ghostly. She had to grab onto the wall to keep from falling. The leg stayed transparent for almost 30 seconds before becoming solid again. "The court scientists have tried everything," she continued, sitting down heavily in a chair that adjusted itself to support her. "Dimensional stabilizers, quantum field generators, genetic therapy. Nothing works. The episodes are becoming more frequent and lasting longer." Marcus moved closer, studying her with the same careful attention he used when diagnosing problems with his ship's engines. "When do the episodes happen most often?" "What?" The princess seemed surprised by the question. "I mean, is there a pattern? Do they happen more when you're stressed or tired or angry? Or is it completely random?" Princess Lyralee frowned, her crystalline features shifting in a way that showed she was thinking. I never really paid attention to patterns. The scientists just measured the dimensional frequencies and energy outputs." "Maybe that's the problem," Marcus suggested. "They're treating the symptoms instead of looking for the cause. On my ship, when something breaks, I don't just try to fix the broken part. I look at what caused it to break in the first place." The princess stared at him with what might have been interest. "You think my condition has a cause beyond dimensional instability?" "Everything has a cause," Marcus said. "The question is finding it. Tell me about your life before this started. Were you happy, stressed? Did anything major happen 2 years ago?" For the first time since Marcus had arrived, Princess Lyralee looked uncertain. She walked back to her desk and sat down, her movements careful and controlled. 2 years ago I was supposed to begin formal courtship with Duke Threnox," she said quietly. "It's an arranged marriage to unite our family with his. The wedding was planned for next year. And how do you feel about that?" The princess's body flashed with red light, the Zephyrian equivalent of anger. "How I feel is irrelevant. Royal marriages are political arrangements, not personal choices. My feelings don't matter." "But you have feelings about it anyway," Marcus pressed gently. "Of course I do," she snapped. And as she spoke, her entire torso became transparent for several seconds. "I'm not a bargaining chip to be traded between noble families. I have my own thoughts, my own dreams, my own... She stopped talking as she realized what had just happened. Her body had phased during her emotional outburst. "Interesting," Marcus said. "What were you going to say?" "Your own what?" Princess Lyralee looked at him suspiciously. "Why do you care what I think? You're just here because you were ordered to be." Marcus pulled over a chair and sat down across from her, making sure to keep a respectful distance. "You're right, I was ordered here. But now that I am here, I want to understand. On my world, we believe that understanding someone is the first step to helping them." "Your world," she repeated thoughtfully. "Tell me about it." "Earth, isn't it?" "Yes, it's very different from here. We don't have crystal cities or floating palaces. Most of our buildings are made of metal and stone and glass. Our sky is blue instead of purple, and we only have one sun instead of 3. "It sounds primitive," the princess said, but there was curiosity in her voice instead of disgust. "Maybe by your standards," Marcus agreed, "but we have something that might seem strange to you." We choose our own partners. When humans get married, it's because they want to be together, not because their families arranged it. Princess Lyrelai's body flickered again, but this time it seemed different. Instead of becoming transparent, she seemed to become more solid, more present. That sounds chaotic, she said, but Marcus could tell she was intrigued. It is chaotic, he laughed. Humans are chaotic by nature. We don't follow rigid plans or ancient protocols. We adapt, we improvise, we make mistakes and learn from them. It drives other species crazy, but it works for us. The court scientists say chaos is the enemy of stability, the princess said. Maybe, Marcus replied, but sometimes a little chaos is exactly what you need to break out of a pattern that isn't working. They talked for several more hours, and Marcus noticed something interesting. When Princess Lyrelai was engaged in conversation, when she was thinking about new ideas instead of dwelling on her problems, the phasing episodes stopped completely. Her body remained solid and present. When a servant brought their dinner, the princess insisted that Marcus eat with her instead of being served separately like a pet. It was another break from protocol that seemed to stabilize her condition. You know, she said as they shared the strange but delicious Zephyrian food. I haven't had a conversation like this in years. Everyone at court either gives me medical updates or talks about politics and trade agreements. What would you like to talk about? Marcus asked. Princess Lyrelai smiled, and her whole body seemed to glow brighter. Tell me more about chaos, and about choosing your own path. These are concepts I've never been allowed to explore. As Marcus began to explain human philosophy and culture, he realized that the princess's condition might not be medical at all. It might be her body's way of trying to escape from a life that felt like a prison. The cure might not be in any medicine or technology. It might be in giving her something she had never had before, the freedom to be herself. But changing the mind of an alien princess was one thing. Changing the minds of an entire royal court who saw humans as inferior beings would be much more difficult. And Marcus had the feeling that some very powerful people would not be happy about the changes he was already starting to see in Princess Lyrelai. Still, as he watched her laugh at one of his stories about human customs, he felt hopeful for the first time since arriving on this world. Maybe, just maybe, he could help save her life while proving that humans deserved respect among the stars. Palace, and the changes in Princess Lyrelai were remarkable. The constant phasing episodes had reduced to maybe 1 or 2 per day, and those were much shorter and less severe. More importantly, she seemed happier than she had been in years. Marcus had introduced her to concepts that were completely foreign to Zephyrian culture. They talked about personal freedom, the value of individual choice, and the idea that making mistakes was a natural part of learning. The princess absorbed these ideas like a thirsty plant soaking up water. Tell me again about human music, she said one morning as they shared breakfast. She was working on a holographic display that showed complex mathematical equations, but she could multitask in ways that amazed Marcus. Well, it's not like Zephyrian music, Marcus explained. Your music is mathematically perfect, every note precisely calculated. Human music is messier. We have rhythm and melody, but we also have something called improvisation. Improvisation, she repeated, testing the word. Making it up as you go along. Exactly. Jazz musicians, for example, start with a basic melody and then create new variations on the spot. No two performances are exactly the same. Princess Lyrelai's crystalline features showed fascination. But how do they coordinate with other musicians if they don't know what notes will be played? They listen to each other and adapt. They respond to what their partner is doing and build on it. It requires trust and flexibility. Trust, she said thoughtfully. Her body had been solid and stable all morning, something that would have been impossible a few weeks ago. We don't have much of that in the royal court. Marcus had noticed that. The palace was full of political intrigue, with nobles constantly scheming for advantage. Everyone watched everyone else, looking for signs of weakness or opportunity. It was no wonder the princess had developed a condition that made her disappear from reality. Speaking of the court, Marcus said carefully, I've been hearing rumors. Princess Lyrelai's expression became guarded. What kind of rumors? Some of the nobles aren't happy about my presence here, or about the changes in your condition. It was true. Marcus had overheard conversations in the corridors, seen the hostile looks from various dukes and duchesses. Many of them seemed to think that a human curing their princess was somehow an insult to Zephyrian superiority. Duke Thrinox has been particularly vocal, the princess said quietly. He believes that my recovery is unnatural. Marcus felt a chill. Duke Thrinox was the noble who was supposed to marry Princess Lyrelei. If she recovered completely, the wedding would proceed as planned, and she would be trapped in the same kind of rigid, loveless life that had caused her condition in the first place. What does he want you to do? He wants me to dismiss you, she said. He claims that human influence is corrupting my royal nature. He's been pressuring my mother to end our arrangement. Before Marcus could respond, the door to their quarters dissolved away. Duke Thrinox himself entered, flanked by 2 guards. The Duke was an impressive Zephyrian, tall and broad with crystalline skin that gleamed like polished silver. His eyes glowed with cold blue light as he stared at Marcus with obvious disgust. "Princess," he said, his voice formal and stiff, "I must speak with you privately." "Anything you have to say can be said in front of Marcus," Princess Lyrelei replied, her body flickering slightly with stress. Duke Thrinox's expression hardened. "Very well. I have come to inform you that your behavior has become unacceptable. You spend your time with this primitive creature, absorbing its chaotic philosophies. This is not suitable for a future queen." "I'm feeling better than I have in years," the princess said firmly. "My condition is improving." "Your condition was a test from the ancient powers," Duke Thrinox declared. "You were meant to overcome it through proper Zephyrian discipline and meditation, not by contaminating yourself with alien ideas." Marcus felt his temper rising, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting into a fight with a duke would only make things worse for Princess Lyrelei. "The princess's health should be the priority," Marcus said carefully. "Whatever helps her recover should be welcomed." Duke Thrinox turned his cold gaze to Marcus. "You should not speak in the presence of your betters, human. Your kind exists to serve, not to give opinions." "That's enough," Princess Lyrelei said, stepping between them. As she spoke, her entire body became solid and radiant with inner light. "Marcus is my partner in recovering my health, and he will be treated with respect." "Partner?" Duke Thrinox's voice rose with outrage. "You call this creature your partner? Have you forgotten that you are promised to me? That our union will strengthen both our houses?" "I haven't forgotten anything," the princess replied. "But I've learned that there might be other ways to live." The Duke's crystalline skin flushed with red light, the Zephyrian sign of extreme anger. "You have been poisoned by human weakness. This ends now." He gestured to his guards, who stepped forward menacingly. But before they could act, another voice echoed through the room. "What is the meaning of this disturbance?" Everyone turned to see Queen Valestra entering the room. Her massive presence seemed to fill the entire space, and her crystalline body blazed with authority. Duke Thrinox immediately bowed deeply, but Marcus noticed that Princess Lyrelei remained standing straight. "Your Majesty," the Duke said, "I was attempting to counsel the princess about proper behavior." The Queen's glowing eyes moved from the Duke to her daughter to Marcus. "And what is your assessment of the princess's condition, Duke Thrinox?" "She appears physically improved," he admitted reluctantly. "But at what cost?" "She has adopted alien ways of thinking. She questions traditions that have guided our people for millennia." Queen Valestra moved closer to her daughter, studying her carefully. Princess Lyrelei's body remained perfectly solid and stable under her mother's examination. "The princess has not experienced a major phasing episode in over a week," the Queen observed. "Her dimensional stability has increased dramatically." "Because she's learning to think for herself," Marcus said, earning shocked looks from everyone in the room. "Your Majesty, the princess's condition wasn't just medical. It was psychological. She was trying to escape from a life that felt like a prison." "Silence," Duke Thrinox roared. "How dare you presume to analyze royal psychology?" But Queen Valestra held up a hand for quiet. "Continue, human Marcus Chen." Marcus took a deep breath. This was his chance to explain what he had learned, but it was also incredibly dangerous. If he was wrong, or if he offended the Queen, he could be executed. "Princess Lyrelei started phasing when she felt like she had no control over her own life," he said. "The arranged marriage, the rigid protocols, the constant pressure to be perfect. Her body was trying to escape to other realities because this one didn't feel real to her anymore." "Preposterous," Duke Thrinox declared. The princess was honored to be chosen for such an important alliance. Were you honored? Marcus asked the princess directly. Did you want the marriage? Princess Lyralee looked at her mother, then at the Duke, then back at Marcus. Her body flickered slightly, but she took a deep breath and stabilized herself. No, she said quietly. I wasn't honored. I was terrified. The admission hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Duke Thrinox's face twisted with fury while Queen Valestra looked thoughtful. You see? The Duke said. The human has filled her mind with selfish ideas about personal desires over duty. This is exactly the corruption I warned about. What if personal desires and duty don't have to conflict? Marcus suggested. What if Princess Lyralee could serve her people better by being true to herself? Impossible, Duke Thrinox said. Royal marriages are political necessities. Personal feelings are irrelevant. Maybe that's the problem, Marcus replied. Maybe that kind of thinking is what made the princess sick in the first place. Queen Valestra had been listening to this exchange with growing interest. Now she spoke, her voice thoughtful. The human may have a point, she said slowly. Our methods failed to cure my daughter. His methods are succeeding. Perhaps we should consider why. Duke Thrinox's crystalline skin flashed with panic. Your Majesty, surely you don't intend to cancel the engagement based on the ravings of a primitive alien. I intend to do whatever is best for my daughter and my kingdom, the Queen replied firmly. If that means reconsidering old ways of doing things, then so be it. The Duke stared at her in disbelief, then at Princess Lyralee, who was glowing with hope and determination. Finally, his gaze settled on Marcus with pure hatred. This isn't over, human, he said quietly. You may have fooled the Queen with your alien trickery, but I know what you really are. You're a threat to everything we hold sacred, and threats must be eliminated. With that ominous warning, Duke Thrinox left the room, his guards following behind him. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He had made a powerful enemy, and something told him the Duke wouldn't give up easily. Could feel the hostility from various court nobles growing stronger. Servants who had been polite before now avoided eye contact. Guards watched him with suspicious expressions. Even some of the scientists who had been studying Princess Lyralee's condition seemed resentful that a simple human had succeeded where they had failed. Princess Lyralee noticed the change too. They hate you, she said one evening as they walked through her private garden. They hate that you've helped me when they couldn't. It's not about me, Marcus replied, watching the alien flowers that glowed softly in the purple twilight. It's about what I represent. If a human can solve problems that Zephyrian science can't, it challenges their belief that they're superior to other species. The princess's body flickered slightly at the mention of species superiority, but she quickly stabilized herself using the breathing techniques Marcus had taught her. My mother is changing too, she said thoughtfully. She's been asking questions about human culture, about how your governments work. I think she's starting to realize that there might be wisdom in your chaotic ways. That was encouraging news, but Marcus remained worried about Duke Thrinox. The noble had been suspiciously quiet since their confrontation, and Marcus had learned enough about court politics to know that quiet enemies were often the most dangerous. His concerns proved justified 3 days later. Marcus woke up in the middle of the night to a sound he had never heard before. The palace itself seemed to be groaning, as if the structure was under tremendous stress. Through the transparent wall of their quarters, he could see that the sky outside was flickering between different colors, like reality itself was having trouble staying stable. Princess Lyralee sat up in her bed, her crystalline body blazing with alarm. Something's wrong, she said. The dimensional fields around the palace are fluctuating. As she spoke, her own body began to phase more severely than Marcus had seen in weeks. Her entire lower half became transparent and she nearly fell through her bed. What's happening? Marcus asked, rushing to help steady her. I don't know, she gasped. It feels like the whole planet is becoming unstable. Emergency alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Guards ran through the corridors, their crystalline bodies flashing with urgent colors. Through the chaos, Marcus could hear announcements in the Zephyrian language, but he couldn't understand what they were saying. Princess Lyralee listened for a moment, then went pale. The dimensional stabilizers are failing, she translated. The entire capital is at risk of phasing into another reality. The door to their quarters dissolved, and Queen Valestra entered at a run. Her massive crystalline form was blazing with energy, but Marcus could see fear in her glowing eyes. "Lyrelai, we must evacuate you immediately," the Queen said. "The palace's dimensional anchors are collapsing. If we don't get you away from here, the instability could make your condition permanent." "What about everyone else?" the princess asked. "The millions of people in the city?" "Our scientists are working on the problem," the Queen replied, but her tone didn't sound confident. Marcus felt pieces clicking together in his mind. "Your Majesty, this isn't an accident, is it?" The Queen turned to him with surprise. "What do you mean?" "Duke Thrinox warned me that I was a threat to everything you hold sacred," Marcus said. "What if he decided to eliminate that threat by causing a crisis that would prove human methods don't work?" Princess Lyrelai's eyes widened with understanding. "The dimensional stabilizers," she breathed. "He has access to them through his position on the Science Council. If he sabotaged them..." Before anyone could respond, another figure entered the room. Duke Thrinox himself appeared, but instead of his usual arrogant confidence, he looked panicked and desperate. "Your Majesty," he said breathlessly, "the situation is worse than we thought. The dimensional storm is spreading beyond the capital. It could consume the entire planet within hours." "How is that possible?" Queen Valestra demanded. "The sabotage was more extensive than anticipated," the Duke replied, then stopped as he realized what he had just admitted. Marcus stepped forward. "You did this," he said. "You caused this crisis to get rid of me." Duke Thrinox's crystalline face twisted with a mixture of guilt and defiance. "I did what was necessary to preserve our way of life. Your alien corruption was spreading through the court like a disease. Better to risk everything than to let our pure culture be destroyed by primitive thinking." "You fool," Queen Valestra roared, her body blazing with fury. "You've endangered millions of lives." "It was supposed to be contained to the palace," the Duke protested. "A small dimensional storm that would prove human methods were unreliable. But the feedback loop has grown beyond control." As if to emphasize his words, the floor beneath their feet began to flicker. Through the transparent sections, Marcus could see parts of the city below becoming ghostly and insubstantial. "Can your scientists fix it?" Marcus asked. The Duke shook his head miserably. "They're trying, but the storm has become chaotic. Their mathematical models can't predict its behavior." "Chaotic," Marcus repeated thoughtfully. He looked at Princess Lyrelai, who was fighting to keep her own body stable as the dimensional instability affected her condition. "Princess, what do you know about the stabilizer systems?" "I've studied them," she said, her voice strained with effort. "They work by imposing mathematical order on dimensional fluctuations. They force reality to follow predictable patterns. But what if that's the wrong approach?" Marcus suggested. "What if instead of trying to control the chaos, we work with it?" Duke Thrinox laughed bitterly. "Work with chaos? That's impossible. Chaos destroys order." "Not always," Marcus said, his mind racing. "In human music, chaos and order work together to create harmony. In our weather systems, chaotic patterns eventually stabilize into new equilibrium states. Maybe we don't need to stop this storm. Maybe we need to guide it." Queen Valestra stared at him. "You want to surf a dimensional storm?" "Why not?" Marcus replied. "Your rigid systems failed. Maybe it's time to try something flexible." Princess Lyrelai's eyes lit up with understanding. "The resonance frequency," she said. "Instead of fighting the storm's natural patterns, we could harmonize with them. Use the chaos to create a new kind of stability." "That's insane," Duke Thrinox protested. "You'd be guessing, improvising with forces that could destroy reality itself." "Sometimes improvisation is exactly what you need," Marcus said, remembering his earlier conversations with the princess about human adaptability. The Queen looked back and forth between the Duke's terrified certainty and Marcus's confident uncertainty. Outside, the sky was now flashing between different colors so rapidly it hurt to look at. Time was running out. "What would you need?" she asked Marcus. "Access to the main stabilizer controls," he said, "and Princess Lyrelai's help. Her condition gives her a natural sensitivity to dimensional fluctuations. Together we might be able to feel our way through this instead of calculating our way through it." "You're asking me to trust the fate of our world to human intuition and alien instinct?" the Queen said. "I'm asking you to trust that sometimes the best solutions come from working together instead of trying to control everything," Marcus replied. The Queen was quiet for a long moment, then nodded decisively. "Duke Thrinox, you will guide them to the control center immediately. This is your chance to help fix what you broke." As they rushed through the chaotic corridors of the palace, Marcus hoped his confidence was justified. He was about to attempt something that had never been tried before, using principles that most Zephyrians considered impossible. But if it worked, it would prove once and for all that humans deserved to be treated as equals among the stars. And if it failed, at least he would fail while trying to save millions of innocent lives. The dimensional storm grew stronger with each passing minute, reality itself seeming to bend and twist around them. Soon Marcus and Princess Lyrelei would either save their world or watch it disappear into the chaos between realities. Either way, the galaxy would never forget what happened next. It was located deep beneath the palace, in a chamber that had been carved from solid crystal. When Marcus and Princess Lyrelei arrived with Duke Threenox and the Queen, they found Zephyrian scientists working frantically at control panels that covered every wall. Holographic displays showed the dimensional storm spreading across the planet like a disease. "Report," Queen Valestra commanded. The chief scientist, an elderly Zephyrian whose crystalline body had turned almost white with age, looked up from his instruments. "Your Majesty, we've tried every stabilization protocol in our databases. Nothing works. The storm has become too chaotic to predict or control." "How long before it reaches critical mass?" the Queen asked. "Perhaps 2 hours," the scientist replied grimly. "After that, the entire planet will phase permanently into an alternate dimension. Everyone on Zephys Prime will be lost forever." Marcus stepped forward to examine the control panels. The Zephyrian technology was far more advanced than anything humans had built, but the basic principles were similar to the engineering systems on his ship. More importantly, he could feel the rhythm of the dimensional storm through the vibrations in the crystal chamber. "Princess," he said, "can you sense the storm's patterns?" Lyrelei closed her eyes and extended her hands toward the nearest control panel. Her crystalline body began to resonate in harmony with the dimensional fluctuations, and Marcus could see data flowing across the displays in response to her natural sensitivity. "It's not random," she said with surprise. "There is a pattern, but it's organic instead of mathematical. Like a living thing instead of a machine." "Exactly," Marcus said. "Your scientists have been trying to force the storm to follow equations, but chaos doesn't work that way. We need to dance with it, not fight it." Duke Threenox, who had been watching in sullen silence, finally spoke up. "Even if you're right, how do you propose to dance with forces that could tear apart reality?" Marcus looked around the room at all the Zephyrian faces staring at him with mixtures of hope and skepticism. These beings had spent their entire lives believing that order and control were the only ways to solve problems. What he was about to attempt went against everything they had been taught. "Princess Lyrelei and I are going to enter the storm directly," he announced. The room erupted in shocked protests from the scientists. Even Queen Valestra looked alarmed. "That's suicide," the chief scientist declared. "The dimensional energies would tear you apart instantly." "Not if we harmonize with them instead of resisting them," Marcus explained. "The princess's condition has given her the ability to phase between realities. Instead of fighting that ability, we're going to use it." He turned to Princess Lyrelei, who was listening with growing understanding and excitement. "You've been learning to control your phasing through emotional stability and mental flexibility," he said. "Now we're going to take that to the next level. We'll phase into the storm itself and guide it from the inside." "That's impossible," Duke Threenox protested. "No one can survive inside a dimensional storm." "No Zephyrian can survive it," Marcus corrected. "But humans are naturally adapted to chaos, and the princess has learned to embrace uncertainty instead of fearing it. Together we might be able to do what neither of our species could accomplish alone." Princess Lyrelei stepped closer to Marcus, her crystalline body glowing with determination. "What do you need me to do?" "Trust me," Marcus said simply, "and trust yourself. We're going to improvise our way through this like jazz musicians creating harmony from chaos." Queen Valestra looked at her daughter for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "If this is what you choose, I will support you. But if there's any other way?" "There isn't," the chief scientist said quietly. "All of our conventional methods have failed. If the human thinks he can succeed where we cannot," he shrugged, his crystalline shoulders catching the light, "perhaps it's time to try something unprecedented." Marcus and Princess Lyrelei moved to the center of the control chamber, where the dimensional energies were strongest. Around them, the Zephyrian scientists worked to modify the stabilizer systems. preparing to channel the storm's power through the two volunteers, instead of trying to suppress it. "Are you ready?" Marcus asked, taking the princess's hand. Her crystalline skin felt warm and alive, vibrating with potential energy. "I'm terrified," she admitted, "but I'm also more excited than I've ever been in my life. For the first time, I feel like I'm choosing my own destiny instead of having it chosen for me." Together, they stepped into the energy field at the chamber's center. Immediately, Marcus felt the dimensional storm trying to tear him apart. Reality flickered around them like a broken hologram, showing glimpses of other worlds, other possibilities. But instead of fighting the chaos, he let it flow through him, using his human adaptability to bend without breaking. Princess Lyralee was doing the same, her royal training in mental discipline combining with the flexibility she had learned from Marcus. Her body phased in and out of different dimensions, but now it was controlled, purposeful. She was surfing the storm instead of being swept away by it. "I can feel the pattern," she called out over the roar of dimensional energies. "It's like music, but in mathematics instead of sound." "Then let's make some music," Marcus replied. And together they began to guide the storm's chaotic rhythms toward a new kind of harmony. The process was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. He couldn't see the storm in the traditional sense, but he could feel its moods, its intentions, its natural flow. Working with Princess Lyralee, he began to nudge it gently away from the destructive patterns that would destroy the planet and toward more stable configurations. It took every bit of human intuition and Zephyrian precision working in perfect cooperation. When Marcus's instincts told him to push in one direction, the princess's mathematical mind calculated the exact force needed. When her dimensional sensitivity detected a dangerous fluctuation, his adaptability found a way to flow around it safely. Gradually, amazingly, the storm began to respond. Instead of growing stronger and more chaotic, it started to settle into new patterns that were complex but stable. The dimensional energies that had threatened to tear the planet apart began to weave themselves into something beautiful and protective. Outside the chamber, the scientists watched in amazement as their instruments showed the crisis resolving itself. The dimensional storm was transforming into a protective field that would actually make the planet more stable than it had been before. When Marcus and Princess Lyralee finally emerged from the energy field, they were both exhausted but triumphant. The princess's body was perfectly solid and stable, glowing with an inner light that seemed stronger than ever before. Marcus felt changed too, as if his exposure to the dimensional energies had somehow enhanced his natural human adaptability. "It's done," Princess Lyralee announced to the room. "The storm has been transformed into a protective shield. Zephys Prime is safer now than it has been in centuries." The scientists erupted in cheers, but Queen Valestra was looking at her daughter with wonder. "You've changed," she observed. "Your condition is completely cured." "More than cured," the princess replied. "I understand now what Marcus has been trying to teach me. Strength doesn't come from rigid control. It comes from learning to dance with uncertainty." Duke Threnox, who had been watching the entire process in stunned silence, finally found his voice. I was wrong," he said quietly. "About humans, about chaos, about everything. I nearly destroyed our world because I was too proud to admit that our way might not be the only way." Marcus looked at the Duke with compassion instead of anger. "Being wrong isn't a failure," he said. "It's an opportunity to learn something new." In the days that followed, news of the miraculous rescue spread throughout the Zephyrian Empire and beyond. The story of how a human and a Zephyrian princess had saved an entire world by working together captured the imagination of species across the galaxy. Queen Valestra formally dissolved her daughter's engagement to Duke Threnox, declaring that royal marriages would henceforth be based on mutual choice rather than political arrangement. More importantly, she announced sweeping reforms to the Empire's social structure, creating new opportunities for cooperation between Zephyrians and other species. Princess Lyralee chose to continue her partnership with Marcus, not as a medical necessity but as a personal preference. Together, they became ambassadors for a new kind of relationship between their species, one based on mutual respect and shared learning. Marcus's crew was not only freed, but honored as heroes. The Prometheus became the flagship of a new trade alliance that treated humans as equal partners, rather than inferior servants. Duke Threnox, rather than being punished for his sabotage, was assigned to work with human colonies throughout the Empire. Gradually, his exposure to human culture taught him to value adaptability and cooperation over rigid hierarchy. But perhaps the most important change was philosophical. The rescue had proven that some problems couldn't be solved by any single species working alone. The galaxy was a complex, chaotic place that required multiple perspectives and approaches to navigate successfully. As Marcus and Princess Lyrelai stood together on the palace balcony, thank you for watching and comment for next part.